Hi, this is Chazz Palminteri, and you're watching Comedy Matters TV.
Hey, this is Jeffrey Gurian for Comedy Matters TV, and I'm here with Chazz Palminteri to talk about a lot of things, but especially his new film called Mighty Fine. How are you, Chazz?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. First, let me start out by congratulating you on your performance in Mighty Fine. It was a very interesting film.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You know, it's an issue about that anger issue in men, and this is the 70s, you know, and that people didn't really talk about that, you know, so I really wanted to touch on that issue, and that's why I love the movie, written by Debbie Goodstein, based loosely on her dad. You know, so she's a first-time director, but she really knew the milieu and she knew the element really well, and she wrote a terrific movie, and it was a pleasure to be in it.
What I thought was really interesting was that it examined a man who was consumed with anger. He could be the nicest guy, but once in a while he'd be consumed with anger and violence, but yet it wasn't a particularly violent movie.
Right. He wasn't violent where he would hit people. But, you know, emotional abuse is just as bad as physical abuse, you know, and sometimes emotional abuse gets swept under the carpet. You know, the wife always says, well, he doesn't hit me. I don't have to call the police. I know he yells at the kids, he scares them, but he doesn't hit them. But people don't realize that emotional abuse just gets spread down from one generation to the next. So sooner or later, somebody has to stop it.
What was interesting, and I actually made notes about it because I'm aware of your earlier work where violence was a part of it. And there were several scenes in here where I thought, like, where there could have been violence. First, you played a great Jewish guy, by the way.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, Jews and Italians are very much alike.
Yes, I met a lot of Jewish men, just very much like me.
Exactly, and especially when you come from the Bronx in those days. What part of the Bronx were you from, by the way?
187 and Belmont Avenue.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Where Dion grew up.
Yes, right where
And the Belmonts. I wasn't far. I was on Tremont near the concourse. Sure. Like 176th and Clay.
And Clay, yes. Yeah, well, you had money. Yeah. You had money.
Those days, if you lived anywhere near the concourse, you were considered that you made it.
You made it. You were on the concourse back then? You made it.
People wouldn't believe how the Bronx was years ago. It was a pleasure. I mean, it was unbelievable. No one locked their doors, and people were friendly. It was a whole different world.
It was a different time. It was a different time.
Absolutely. So there were scenes where you were the only Jews in town. When you called the guy a yutz, there was a potential there for violence, but it was funny. He's like, what's a yutz?
I said, look in the mirror, you know, exactly. And you'll know what a yutz is.
And the fact that you lent money from the mob to keep your business going, there was also a potential there for a violent scene. Yes. But it never occurred, and I thought that was an interesting choice on her part.
Well, she made a choice where it really wasn't about shoot 'em up, bang up, you know, type of movie. This was really about people and about Joe Fine being his fatal flaw. It was really about that, and I think that's what was important. It wasn't a mafia movie, it wasn't a gangster movie, it was just about people.
It could have been the other, and that's why, as a writer myself, I thought it was a very interesting way to go, because he encapsulated a guy who could be consumed with violence. When he was tender with his daughters, there was no one nicer. He wanted to do the best for his family, exactly. and you totally brought that out. But he had this rage that built up in him where he was capable of anything.
Anything. He had you know, I mean, there are people like that. They have these rage issues that obviously they need to be on medication, or they need to just see a shrink. You know, you have to work on these tools if you're going to have that kind of anger, whether it be medication or just tools that a shrink can give you. And he didn't want to do neither.
I'm fascinated by, and I think a lot of people are, the concept of violence fascinates people. You addressed it very well in Bronx Tale. I mean, I think, you know, I don't remember a lot of movies, but I would guess that if anybody was going to say what scene stuck out in their mind, it would be the fight in the biker fight in the bar, right. When the mob guys come up with bats. Did you write that line, "Now you can't leave"?
No, actually, he said it. The guy who really said it. When I was there, he said something similar to that. He said, well, you thought you were a tough guy now? You're coming in here trying to do this? He goes, and he says something like, now let me see you leave right now. Okay, try to leave. But so me, I just put it, as a writer, I just kind of accentuated it. Now you just can't leave.
So you actually saw a scene like that happen?
Yes. Yeah.
because the way you wrote that, I mean, those simple words were so shocking, and shocking to the bikers too. Now you can. One guy in a suit locks the door and just says, "Now you can't leave," to 8 bikers. It struck. I was watching it, and I felt the nervousness of the scene. I felt the fear to this day. It was an amazing line. Every once in a while, a writer comes up with something like that. It's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, every time I get on a airplane, and when the door closes, the pilot usually gets on the thing and goes, "Now you just can't leave," you know. And I laugh. When I walk into a restaurant, the maitre d' walks as I'm leaving. He goes, "Hey, now you just can't." So I mean, I hear it every day.
So it's the kind of line that really stuck out in people's minds. It's because it's been a long time since that film has been out, right? Was that 93?
93, yes. But I hear a lot. I hear "Throw 'em in the bathroom." I hear "It's better to be loved or feared." I hear. I mean. A Bronx Tale, the movie, has seeped its way into the American culture as far as dialogue goes. They kind of use it very similar to way people use, take the cannolis, leave the gun, with The Godfather, where they use those kind of lines all over the place. So I'm very proud of that. I don't get bored by hearing that at all. So
I'm glad, because what I also found fascinating was that it started as a stage play, if I'm correct, and you played 18 parts.
I did the movie on stage by myself, that's correct. I did the whole movie on stage by myself, and that's how I got discovered. That was my, my big break. I did it in LA, and it went, the first time I did it, I mean, the people just went crazy, and they offered me $250,000 to walk away from it.
I heard about that, and that really impressed me as well, because you turned it down, right?
I turned it down. I had $200 in the bank. I turned it down to $250,000. Then they offered me $500,000, and I still turned it down. Then they offered me $1 million, and I still turned it down.
Oh my God!
I know, but it's the truth.
No, but that's a phenomenal story. It's very similar to Stallone with Rocky. I heard that he hardly had any money. They offered him $250,000, and he turned it down because he wouldn't be starring in it. And that's what made his empire, and that's what launched your amazing career. It's phenomenal.
That's right. Well, things like that, they say it happens once every 15, 20 years. There was Stallone, it happened, then it was me. Then it happened again, I think, my Big Fat Greek Wedding. I think she held out. So it happens like once every 15, 20 years. But they wanted to do it, and then De Niro walked into the theater a week after I turned down $1 million. He saw it, met me backstage and said, "It's incredible, it's great, it'll make a great movie. I want to play your father, I want to direct it. I know you want to play Sonny, that's great, you'll be great as Sonny, and you should write it because it's about your life, and if you shake my hand, that's the way it'll be." I shook his hand, and that's the way it was.
Wow. That is just a phenomenal story. It fascinates me because so many people would have grabbed the money.
Yes.
But some inner voice must have told you not to do it, because a writer always thinks they have a lot of projects in them. What made you feel that Bronx Tale was that important that you could turn down $1 million when you had $200 in the bank?
Well, I'll tell you, first I was an actor and a writer, so I wanted to play that part. And people always ask me, "How did you turn down the $1 million?" And I always say to them, the $1 million wasn't the hard one. The $250 was harder, because the $250 came out of nowhere. I was dead broke, and all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, after I opened, I got offered $250,000. I was like, "What? Somebody's going to give me $250? Are they kidding?" So once I said no, and I made up my mind, no, I'm playing the part, then it became just numbers to me. 500, $1 million, $1.5 million. I didn't care. I just was that crazy.
Did you have representation in those days? Because I could imagine your agent going, "Are you insane? Turning down $1 million?" I
had representation when it hit the $1 million. But the $250 and the $500, I didn't. But then finally I signed with William Morris, and they did represent me, but they understood. I said, "Look, I'm playing the part. I'm playing Sonny, and I'm writing the screenplay. If I feel that you're not on my side, I will leave you." And they said, "It's cool." Don't forget, I was 39 years old, so I wasn't a kid. You see, so I was already been around the block.
But still, it could go the other way too. When you're 39 years old and you feel like you haven't gotten the acclaim that you deserve, a lot of people would have jumped at the money. Yes. And I just respect that. It's an amazing story to me that people can turn down that on a belief in yourself. It shows a person who is dedicated to his own talent, who understands what he's got
I was blessed with a mom and dad who gave me an incredible amount of time, of confidence. So I knew I was going to make it. I knew it. You know, people always used to say to me, how does it feel to be successful? And I always said to them, I said, well, I've always been successful. Now I'm just famous. You know, inside of me, I always felt that I was going to make it, always. People always said, well, did you ever think what were you going to do? I said, no, because I knew it was going to happen. So I think the belief of what I felt kept it that way. My parents were incredible people. My sisters were very successful, both of them, so they did a great job.
Your sisters are in the entertainment business as well?
No, not at all. No. My sister was an entrepreneur. She built the travel agencies. She had 30 of them, then sold them and retired. And my other sister was an associate professor, got a master's in two different, so both of us, all three of us were very successful.
That's incredible. I just love those kind of stories. And I saw that, let me see, Arthur Nascarello was in the film. I didn't even recognize Arthur. I hadn't seen him for a while. He looked so different. Does he look like that now, or did they make him up that way for the film?
Well, they made him up a little different for the film, but Arthur's a terrific actor. He was in The Sopranos, as we all know, and he was a wonderful actor, and I really enjoyed working with him.
The reason I asked you about violence is because, well, I'm always fascinated by that. I think people are drawn to it because everyone wishes, well, there was a line in Bronx Tale where De Niro says to his son, people don't respect Sonny, they fear him. Yes. And I remember, you know,
yes,
once told me a great story. He goes, he used to miss when he'd walk into a place and everybody would be scared of him. Yes. He would walk in and he'd have that feeling. He goes, there was nothing like that. Just walking in and feeling that people feared you. And I think sometimes it's people's dream to experience what that's like. Would you agree?
I mean, I understand how felt, but you see, that's the difference between a warped mind and a mind who's much more positive, in tune with the world. I wouldn't want people to fear me. I want people to respect me. If they respect me and respect my work, that's what I like. Fear me? What is that? A gorilla, they could fear a tiger or a gorilla. It's the same thing, you know? But when you see, the mentality of people, and I didn't know at all, but the mentality of people who do that, I understand the mentality because I grew up with guys like that. They have nothing else. They have no fame, they have no money, real money, they have no thing that they accomplished in their life.
I think it's about intelligence too, wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I didn't want to say that, but since you brought it up, yes, it's about intelligence, about, you know, he didn't probably go to school, and these people, what do they have? They have fear. So I could get everything a movie star gets, but they'll fear me, but a movie star is famous. But I can get all those outside gratification things. I can get perks, I can get tickets to this, I can get front table because they fear me. But in reality is what really is that?
I once wrote a play, I dedicated it to Chuck Zito. Yeah. It was a play called A Punch in the Face. Right. And it was right after he knocked out Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yes. And it was a study of violence, whether even the most mild-mannered person could be drawn to violence in order to save himself or someone he cared about. Yes. It kind of asked that question. And to me, I think it's almost inherent in people, if you're going to save someone that you cared about, that you could be drawn into a violent situation.
Oh, absolutely. There was a wonderful movie called Straw Dogs. I don't know if you remember it.
I remember it, but I don't remember the exact...
And it's about that, about a young... Dustin Hoffman played a great part.
Was Harvey Keitel in that?
I don't remember. I don't think so. But you're absolutely right. Can certain people, if you push them to a certain point, everybody has that point, but some people, you know, you could walk by, step on their foot, and they're violent. Yeah, Other people, you have to, like, insult their wife, and then maybe they'll finally do something. So there's kind of different degrees of, what you could take.
Mm-hmm. I understand that you held a writer's retreat. Do you do that often? Do you work with writers to help them develop projects?
I do projects like that. I'm doing this at the Manhattan Film Institute out in Long Island. We're doing a retreat there. I'm teaching, I think, 12 young men writing and one-man shows and things like that. Yeah, I enjoy doing that, yes.
And I understand that you're also a restaurateur.
Yes, I am a restaurateur now. I own a restaurant called Chazz in Baltimore. and it's doing great. I'm very excited by that, and you know, I'm just it's with the Vitale brothers, and it's right on the harbor, right on Harbor East in Baltimore.
Good Italian food, right?
Come on, it's the best Italian food.
The best Italian
Yeah.
food. Were you called Chazz as a kid?
Yes, C first and then Chazz.
But your original name is Calogero, is that how you pronounce it?
Calogero.
Calogero.
That's the way you pronounce it.
Calogero. What an interesting name. I noticed that you used it in Bronx Tale.
Yes.
When Robert De Niro addressed you in the street, he came over Calogero before they hit him in the stomach.
Well, Bronx Tale is about me when I was a little boy. It's about my life. Growing up, that was me, growing up in the Bronx.
What was it like working with Woody in Bullets Over Broadway? Because that was a great part for you as well.
Yeah.
Cheech.
Yeah, well, I mean, Woody was, you know, Woody writes these characters that are just, you know, a hitman who's a genius playwright. Wow. You know, wow. I mean, what a part he wrote for me, you know, so.
But you were up for an Academy Award for that part.
Yes, I was. I was nominated for Academy Award, and I'm very proud of that movie. I think personally it's one of Woody's best, and, you know, that movie will be here for a long time.
It must have been so exciting being up for an Academy Award, right? Do you usually attend the awards anyway?
So once in a while. I mean, when you're up for it, you say, oh, God, yeah, it's pretty exciting. I mean, it's a dream come true. You're sitting there and you watch your face up there with everyone else, you know, with, Gary Sinise and Tom Hanks and all these people, and you go, all right, you know, I'm doing okay.
Yeah, exactly. It must be such an exciting thing. You're a man of great humility, I have to tell you that, with all that you've accomplished. Have you ever done stand-up comedy?
I tried it once for about 6 months, and I was okay in the beginning when I first tried it many years ago. I mean, it's just I always enjoyed hiding behind characters, and for me, I just felt it wasn't for me. I don't know how good I would have been at it, but I always felt I just wanted to act. I wanted to play more characters.
Because you have a comedic sensibility,
yes.
And I perform stand-up. I was a writer for years, but I tried stand-up just to see that I could do it. And it's the hardest thing in the world. It's the hardest thing in the world, to get out on a stage and try to make strangers laugh with things that you think are funny. Right. It's unbelievable.
Well, I mean, but you have to build a show. Nobody just gets up there and does it. You know, people don't realize when you see Chris Rock and you see all these guys on TV, that's material that's been tried and true and worked and reworked, and before Chris goes out and does a 2-hour special for HBO and all these guys, they're on the road for 6 months putting all this together, and then what you see is the best of everything. Right. So they know it works, I mean, but it's hard.
And they make it look like they're just ad-libbing it.
Exactly.
They're doing it for the first time.
Yes, exactly. That's the beauty in it. But it's extremely hard. Anybody thinks you could be, everybody thinks, oh, you're funny, you should be a stand-up comic. Yeah? You think you're funny? Go on stage and let's see you go do it. And see what happens.
There's a big difference between being funny at a party and with your friends and being funny on a stage.
Oh my God, you're so funny. Really. Go on a stage with 12 strangers who are late at night, they're a little drunk, they're in a bad mood. Go make them laugh. Go ahead. Now tell me how good you are, how funny you are. Right.
I'm glad you mentioned Chris, because Chris just wrote the introduction to my new book.
Wow.
Are you familiar with the comic strip, The Comedy Club on 81st and 2nd?
Yeah, sure.
Well, it's 35 years old, and I'm doing the book on the club. It's coming out in a few months.
Great.
And it's where Seinfeld started, and Eddie Murphy and Chris Rock and all those guys. So we're there all the time. So hopefully you'll come by one night.
Yeah, I'd like to come by. I will come by, yes. My favorite comedian today, obviously, is Chris. My favorite stand-up comic of all time, I thought, was Richard Pryor. I thought
he was amazing. He was amazing.
I thought Richard broke incredible ground. I thought he was the first to bring actual stories and make them funny. To me, Richard Pryor was, I mean, I have some, Robin Williams I think is great.
I saw Robin at the Comedy Awards. Have you been to any of the Fryers roasts? I think you were at Quentin Tarantino.
I was at Quentin. Yeah, I've been to a couple, but I love talking about Richard because he was so fast. I was just fascinated by him. I mean, Eddie Murphy and all those guys. I mean, they owe a lot to Richard, I think, because Richard was just. I mean, I saw that special, and I remember people in the theater standing up, having to stand up and walk to the aisle because they were laughing so hard they could not sit down. I remember women and kids, and I never seen anything like that before in my life. To me, Richard Pryor was, you don't like to say that word genius, but I think he was. You know, he just broke new ground, and he was my favorite comic of all time.
Yeah, there are certain people that are just one of a kinds, and all these people do admit that they were influenced by him. Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock says it very openly that he was influenced by him.
Well, how could you not be? I mean, there are certain people that come along in lifetimes who they changed the game, and he did, Richard did, Marlon Brando did in the 50s, and then it wasn't changed again until Robert De Niro did Raging Bull in the 70s. He changed the style of acting. He changed where actors gained the weight and did all that. It's those people that you have to recognize. I think it's very important.
The hardest thing in comedy is finding a comedy persona, finding a uniqueness, which is what I like about Sacha Baron Cohen. When he does something like Borat or Ali G, to me, and I don't use the word genius lightly either, but I think he falls into that category. To be able to stay in character for that long, you know what that's like. If you did 18 characters in Bronx Tale, going from one character to another, to me it is amazing. You out John Leguizamo before he came along, which is amazing.
Yeah, well, thank you. I saw John's show, which I loved. I saw a lot of his shows, in fact, and I thought they were just terrific, all of them. The difference with my show is it was the first time anyone has ever done a linear story. See, most stand-up shows, most one-man shows, they do a character, then they talk to the audience, they break the fourth wall. Where Bronx Tale on stage was a linear movie. All the characters straight through without stopping. That's why that was, I think, so received.
I can't even really picture it. How did you do the fight scene? I mean, you described the fight scene, you described what happened when the bikers came into the bar?
And then do it. Play all the characters. Play Sonny, play the biker, everybody.
Really?
Yes.
Is that available to be seen anywhere? Can people see that?
Not on tape yet, no. I will. I am going to film it. I was going to do it recently on Broadway. I just did it.
I heard that you brought it to Broadway, right?
It was on Broadway, and then I just did it in Las Vegas at the, I did it at, what hotel? I just totally went blank. I did it at the Mirage Hotel in Las Vegas just recently. And it's just a wonderful show, and I do it in Vegas in big venues.
It's amazing that one project can have such an effect on someone's life. I believe in synchronicity. Yeah. I believe that we're being guided all the time throughout our lives, if you're open to that concept. So you were born in the Bronx so that you could tell this story. It's based on the concept that we're born into the families that we're born into by choice. That there are soul groups who choose where you're going to be born to learn lessons that you didn't learn.
Do you realize who you're talking to here? That is my whole belief in life. That is everything that I stand for. Just think about it. I walked down there, sat on the stoop. I just sat down. It happened. If I don't see that killing, who knows what happens?
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, and I'm fascinated by that. I'm actually doing a book on stuff like that called Turning Points. Things that happen in your life that you don't expect. Like you miss your plane and you're cursing your luck. But because you missed the plane, you meet somebody who becomes very important to you in your life who you wouldn't have met had you caught the plane.
Totally. But if you believe in that, you see, if you believe in that, and when I say you, I mean people, then you're open to that concept.
Exactly.
You see, so that's very, very important. I'm always open. Every meeting I do, every person I meet, every breath I take has a reason. Maybe this interview here somebody will see it and it'll trigger something for them.
I'm so glad that I got to hear your perspective on synchronicity, because it's such a powerful concept. Absolutely. And it's something that when you take that into your life and you understand it, it makes your life a lot simpler.
It makes it better.
Because you realize that everything happens for a reason, that there are no accidents.
That's right.
Yeah, so it was phenomenal. Anyway, it was such a pleasure to speak with you, man. It was really great, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks a lot.